Okay, I think we are good to go over here. Hello everybody, and welcome to watch this NGD lecture on light and heavy stones and Sabaki. So I see from the chat that we have quite a few people over here already. Count is 13 people at a time, but I guess more people will join us as the lecture goes on. This is my third lecture for the NGD now. Usually it's been the others, like I think Oscar has done the most of our lectures. Jeff has done some, Matthias has done some, and Lucas Pera as well. So this is just the third one for me. Oh, wait a second. Is it just me or is the stream quality kind of bad? I cannot read out the chat. It's really blurred, isn't it? Okay, so maybe it's just my problem in that case. Okay, that's good. At least at the Niels place it's fine. Alright. Excellent, excellent. Yeah. So, third lecture. My first lecture was in July, which was... maybe some people in the chat were watching it, which was about Control Go, or like how you can possibly, if everything goes well, how you can possibly win the games just with 2 space extensions and 1 space jumps. Just trying to kind of keep the game simple, not take any needless risks. So that was Control Go in July. Then in August, I had a second lecture which was about cockroach style, which is basically when everything goes wrong, your opponent has way too much influence or way too big of a framework, and you just have to deal with it. So then the kind of idea was to adopt the how to call it well, kind of channel a cockroach in your head, like try to become a cockroach who is trying to infest the opponent's house, right? So the point wasn't that it's fun to be a cockroach, but it's more like you're supposed to make the opponent feel as bad as possible about the multiple invasions you're trying to carry out inside. Yeah, you can hear the crickets right now. It's autumn over here. Is it too noisy? Should I close my window? I'm afraid that if I close the window, then it'll get too hot inside this room, so that's why I kept it open, but I thought it's some nice ambience. Okay, yeah, very good. 30 people already. Yeah, so for today's lecture, I figured that I kind of need a tie-in for the 2 lectures. Because we had the control go, which is when everything is going well and you are controlling the game, and the opponent doesn't have a huge framework, which you have to kind of worry about. And we had the other extreme where everything went wrong already, and now you have to basically fight for your life. So there should be something between everything going perfectly and everything going terribly wrong, right? So that's finally how we come to the Sabaki lecture today. And also, yes, so for the topic here, first I just wanted to talk about Sabaki, but then when I started thinking about how to explain Sabaki, I figured that if we don't understand what light stones are and what heavy stones are, then we cannot possibly try to explain Sabaki either. So that's how we have light and heavy stones in the title as well. Maybe let's try to go for a question here. Do you know what light stones and heavy stones are? Can somebody try to explain it to me? When are stones light? When are stones heavy? What does it mean? It's not the physical weight of the stone. I mean, it could be, but usually people don't talk like that. Can I get some ideas here? I do have some game examples prepared as well, of course, but I thought I will let you think first and then go a little bit more into it. Okay, here's some good ideas. Light stones have options and heavy don't. Or light equals easy to sacrifice. I can abandon it at low cost. Light stones don't have much direct value and won't affect status of groups like being cutting stones. Yes. So what you are... so Ilkaral is asking slow move or playing faster. Well, it's true that when you play light stones, it can look like you are playing faster. But yes, usually in Go when we talk about light stones, it refers to something that you can give up if you want to. Or it can also be stones that may be difficult for the opponent to attack. So most of the ideas we are reading here in the chat are correct. I guess I can show the first game example then. So this is a recent game by two of our teachers. Oscar Vasquez is white and Lucas Podpera is black in this one. This had one of the bigger frameworks I've seen recently. So we had kind of a non-Joseki there. Wait, everybody is seeing this, right? Yeah, everybody is seeing this. Some move orders there. And first I wanted to have a look at this whole board situation here. So let's maybe just put it this way. Can you tell me which stones on this board are light in this situation? So just try to kind of jot down which are the stones that the players might maybe... which the players could sacrifice if they wanted to, or which they don't really have to save if they don't want to. So here we have a F3. R4 seems a bit off. Maybe Gardan meant R5. So let's maybe just mark them with triangles actually. Black got all the corners in this game, yes. That was part of the white plan. Now, it's actually a kind of a interesting theoretical question. Like, if we talk about the R4 stone, which I mark with A here, are they light or heavy? Because if we mean that light stones are something that can be sacrificed if you want to, then, well, we didn't go into heavy stones yet, but logically it would mean that heavy stones are something you cannot sacrifice. So, most likely the A cornerstones would be something that black doesn't want to sacrifice. But I think this is also a bit confusing because the A group is not in danger of possibly getting captured, right? Like, it would require white most likely like 4 moves in a row to be able to capture the black corner group. Like this and this and this and this. So I think we can forget about the black A corner in the sense that it's just alive already. And if it's alive, then it cannot possibly be heavy, I think. Because heavy sounds like it's something bad. But the A group cannot possibly be bad in that sense. Yeah, so with regard to this in the chat also, we can see that some people think that light stones are safe stones. So the black A corner would be safe, so it's light. Is the third option solid for stones that are settled? That's also a possible way to think about it. I think I would just say that when we are talking about light and heavy, it should be about unsettled groups. So groups or stones that could possibly get captured, but maybe not. So I would just forget about all these black corners here, for example. We just don't look at them in the way that they are light or heavy. Did anybody say Q4, R14? R14, R11 could be light. Yeah, so Go Dave has the right idea here, I think. So the white B stone is a kind of an open question. I guess it's possible that white doesn't have to respond in the upper right corner. The chat on stream is a bit cut. I think right, because I scrolled here. Maybe this is better now. And also it's cut off from the upper side, but if I try to... Okay, maybe that's a bit more beautiful like that. But no, it's... Maybe I shouldn't be trying these adjustments. Let's call it fine. The chat is fine like that. Yeah, so where was I? So the B stone could be something that I think we could call light, because conceivably white could play somewhere else. White could ignore this black R15 move and let black capture the B stone. It doesn't look too bad, right? Hi Najee, welcome in. So like white could, for example, connect here, right? And let black play here. And white could plausibly again do something very different. Like, well, there's many good ideas, but maybe white might throw some stone in the center to try to build a framework, for example. And that's just a wild idea. So if it's plausible for white to sacrifice the stone that we marked B earlier, I'll just put B here as well. If it's plausible, then it should be a light stone, right? Can a group of stones be light if the amount of points the opponent can win from capturing the stones and the surrounding area will be just too much? Yes, that is one possible. Can a group of stones be light if the amount of points will be too much? That doesn't sound possible, because too much is too much, right? You cannot give the opponent too much. So if it's too much, then you have to prevent that, and then the stone cannot be light because you have to save it, right? So it's not, there's no specific number of points, for example, which makes a stone heavy or light, because that depends on that particular game, right? So it's relative, and it's always about what is too much, what is not enough. Here's also a good point of view that I also use in the lecture here. So light equals no burden, heavy equals large burden. So alive stones can't be heavy because they have no obligation to them. That's also a very good way of thinking, I think. And so Silby, shall I say it, thinks that the B stone here is heavy because it doesn't feel like there's anything much bigger on this board. So CLB would, I guess, would go out from here. In Go, everything is always situational related. That's true. That's why it's a difficult game, you know? Yeah, so if white escaped here, I guess we will see black jumping out from here, white jumping out, black jumping out, possibly still white jumping out. So, well, it's just a normal continuation over here. But so in this case, we could clearly see that now the white running group here clearly isn't light anymore, because white committed into it. White decided that he has to save it and look after it. So now he cannot just, for example, at this point, white has already decided that he wants to take these stones out, right? So now when black plays a move nearby, N11, which is kind of pressuring to white here, white cannot just say that, oh, now I go back here. It doesn't make sense, because now black will continue the attack on the right side, and now it's just becoming a weak group that is becoming even more difficult for white to handle, right? Or if we imagine that white will again play elsewhere, play some big looking move here, let black finish the capture. Now, because white added some stones here, it looks like black was able to form an even bigger territory because of it, right? Yeah, so in this case, if white escapes, then it stops being light after a fashion, right? Okay, so I guess I'll just take out the first slide here. Okay, so is everybody seeing this? Yeah, so just something I quickly wrote down about light stones. So light stones should be flexible. So they should be either easy to defend or sacrificable. So on the flip side, from the opponent's point of view, it means that light stones are difficult to attack. And maybe, better said, they're difficult to attack efficiently. So that even if the opponent could attack your stone and capture it, if they just get 2 points from it in the middle of the game, then that's not an attack you want to make, right? So I guess the text should be difficult to attack efficiently, and I think I will just change that here as well. Just a moment. Difficult to attack efficiently. Okay, and I think everybody is seeing it now. Would you say that light stones are rather useless for both? Light stones are relatively useless, but in general they should still be... in general they are still beneficial for the player who has them, right? Like, for example, I guess I can show the previous game. This one. And for example, we can look at this situation here. So for example, if we think about the 3 white stones in the lower right corner, are these beneficial to white? Maybe. Well, even maybe beneficial is beneficial, right? I mean, if we take a very simple way of thinking here, just remove the white stones from the board without affecting black, and as white, do you prefer to have the stones there or not? Well, in this case you do, right? Because they're not adding to black's territory, they are on the outside, so even if right now they're not connected to anything else white has on the board, it's not like they are a minus to white. So if they're not a minus, then they must be some kind of a plus, usually, in most cases. Yeah, so the 3 stones prevent black to kind of develop on the right side. So if they just didn't exist, then black move like this would actually be forming territory on the right side. So they're still in black's way, right? So this is why also in the slide over here, I've written that light stones are beneficial as they stand. Now, it might be that they're not very beneficial, but it's still more of a plus than a minus, right? It's better to have them than just not have them on the board. And finally, point number 3, which also I think somebody mentioned in the chat, was that they require little or no commitment. So, because they're difficult for the opponent to attack, and they're already useful to you in a way, so they're already kind of doing their job, you can usually forget about them. And even if the opponent manages to capture them, it's not a big deal most of the time. So, contrasting this... Okay, let's continue with the game. So now we come to heavy stones, which we also will see in this game. So in the game, white attached here and just kind of straightforwardly went for the center. And white further made it big. So this would make for an interesting whole board problem for us, but we have a similar one later on. So I will just show what black did here. So black poked at the weakness here. Peeps, peeps. White plays forcing exchange there. Black moves out. Didn't I mention? Black is Lucas Podpera. White is Oscar. Okay, so the game continued like this. And look at the black group here. Is it light? Or is it maybe heavy? I know, I picked a kind of a easy example here. Almost neuron star heavy. Yeah, so this is one of the heavier groups I have seen in a while. So if we go with the idea that heavy is the opposite of opposite of light, then, well, this is a group that black cannot sacrifice, because if this dies, then white will just have too much territory, right? And it's also a group that's not so easy to defend, because can you see a single eye? Like, black has no eyes, black is running out into the center, and waiting out there in the center are these nice white walls in both directions. When is a group none of settled, light, or heavy? Well, I guess we have dead. Dead stones probably shouldn't be light or heavy either, because they just don't affect the game. They're not something you can make live or die anymore. And they're not settled exactly. You call them settled? To me, settled is something that's living. But I guess dead can be settled as well, huh? But yeah, so this would be a prime example of a heavy group over here. And I don't exactly mean to show this in the sense that black did something wrong here. Because this game has the other particular feature that if this black group manages to survive in the center, like actually happened in this game later, so basically the game continued like this, and finally black was able to form two eyes in the center, and white couldn't really get a big compensation out of it. So if this happens, where is white's territory, right? So, although in a sense, when it is reasonable, you prefer your stones to be light rather than heavy, but it's not like heavy is strictly bad. Because there are situations like this that if you have one heavy group, but you can totally concentrate on strengthening it, and when you finally do make it live, it's actually destroying your opponent's framework. It's not like the heavy group is very bad, right? So Oscar has shown a similar one. I think Yakago was in the chat, so maybe he can respond if he's been watching. Vegiland has a good point here. I feel the key here was that there is one heavy group at most at the same time. So then it is reasonable. Yakago is just in, huh? Can Yakago remember something like, what was it? This kind of a game? Go Dave has written it in the chat. Go Dave is referring to some, I guess, a lecture by Oscar earlier. Doesn't look? Nobody wants to claim that they played this kind of a heavy group. Anyway, so here... Oh, right, there was one more heavy example. So the second reason I wanted to show this particular game here was that usually when you think of heavy stones... Actually, maybe earlier is better. Like, when you think of heavy stones, you think of something like this, right? Like, it has to be a big group that you cannot afford to lose. That if the opponent manages to capture it, it's just too much territory, right? And it's true. This is the usual example of heavy stones. But it's also possible for a single stone to be extremely heavy. And that also happened in this game. So white tried extremely hard to attack black here, and not just attack, to kill it. And so the game goes over here, right? So right now, after a black plays this M8 Atari, I think it's fair to say that white's L8 stone is the single heaviest stone on this board. Because if it gets captured, black immediately has 2 eyes, right? So when this happens, this one lone white stone, which is pretty surrounded by black, which has 1 liberty, which is kind of in a ladder as well, although the ladder doesn't work. So this is something that white has to hang on to, or the game is basically over. Because as I mentioned earlier, if black leaves, white has no territory. So this white stone here has a kind of a strategical commitment for white. Like, white's game doesn't make sense if he doesn't save this stone. So it's not necessarily just about the amount of points involved. Well, I guess it is in the sense that if black died here, then white would have enough territory. But we can also think of it in the sense that you have committed to a plan and now you have to follow it, right? So, or kind of a question of consistency. Because you played this move earlier, you have to continue from it logically. So that can also be something that makes your stones or groups on the board heavy. And a single stone can be very heavy, like in this case. Okay, let me get back to the slide here. 30 minutes in. This is surprisingly quick, actually. Okay, so heavy stones. That is so vulgar. Yeah, so heavy stones are pretty much the opposite of light stones, right? They're not flexible, they're awkward, they're difficult to defend, you usually cannot sacrifice them. So again, from the opponent's point of view, they're the most ideal target to attack. When you really want to attack something, then just look for the heaviest group the opponent has and go for it, if it makes any sense. And secondly, so light stones were supposed to be somewhat beneficial to the player who has them. Like, even if they don't have a clear function, it's usually better to have stones on the board than it is to not have stones on the board, right? But a heavy group can be something that you would prefer just not to have if possible. Not always the case. Like, in this game, if it was reasonable for black to make this invasion, then he could handle this one single heavy group and use it to win the game, right? But we could also think of it in the sense that maybe when white played this P13 jump, maybe there was a way for black to handle the center that didn't involve this huge group, which if it dies, will just give the opponent the win, right? Sorry. Yeah, so I was supposed to show this one, right? Yeah, so this kind of a situation. So maybe it was possible for black to pick a different way of playing here that had a little bit less risk of dying, for example. So the way black picked in the game here to poke this weakness, to make this peeps, and also actually make this descent here early. Like, if black simply went out, it could be possible that if the game continues similarly, for example, like this, it could actually be possible that black uses the A cut instead, right? Like, if black gets to play A, white has to respond with B, and this will give black plenty of centi-moves at around C. So, for example, the descent here is a kind of a over-committing move, we could say. It's cutting white, it's taking away potential white territory, but at the same time it's totally reinforcing the white shape here on the left side. So it's not, in that sense, a pure plus. So maybe there was some way that black could pick that didn't quite involve so much commitment for which group he has to handle and how. It could be, in the AI fashion, it could be some random throwing stone around here, for example. But okay, this is also something that we will look at a little bit later into this lecture. It is overweight. Going jogging with a weight vest. Yeah. So commitment I actually went for. So awkward, burden, and require commitment. So when you make a heavy group, then you actually need to make sure it doesn't die. Like also Black did in this game. Okay. Yeah, the liberties would be different. That's one of the key differences there. Not only in the sense that it could be some shortage of liberties, but possibly also if there's like a capturing race, possibly. Although they're shared liberties, so I guess that wouldn't make a difference, huh? Ice would be the same for sure. But even that one could, if we go into the detail, that one could still make a difference in that. So the game also later went like this, right? And like this. So in the game here, white also got the A cutting point for a while. Ah, sorry. I'm not getting used to this. Yeah, so the game continued like this. I don't think Yakago saw this part already. But at least in this game for a while, there was a possibility of white maybe getting to cut at A. In which case, the exchange of B for C is something that black strictly doesn't want, right? Like, black would prefer the other way. If it goes to the scenario where white cuts with A. Yeah, but anyway, that's a small detail. So now that we had light stones and we had heavy stones, now we can actually go into Sabaki. So this was like a 30-minute preparation for the Sabaki lecture that I wanted to give. But now we have a base language that we can continue for, which I thought was necessary for this. So, well, let's forget about the light and heavy stones just for a bit, and now let's check your memory for what is Sabaki. Can somebody explain? Sabaki must be... Well, first of all, I think it's one of the more difficult Japanese terms. Not just difficult in the sense that it's difficult to play out correctly, but also it's a little bit difficult to grasp what exactly it means. Yeah, so here we have a... Yakago is a strong amateur player, and he still cannot exactly... I mean, most likely I think Yakago could also point to what is a Sabaki and what is not. But to give a definition of it is really difficult. I'm pretty sure I'm not getting a good definition here, but I have an attempt at least. So we have a way to settle stones, obtaining good result with heavy group, art of settling stones, skillful handling of stones in the opponent's area. That's a pretty good one, actually. Yeah, so Garden has been playing for over 20 years, I think. So Garden has a good grasp intuitively, but finds it difficult to explain, which is kind of the problem, the core problem here. So of course we could just go directly with the meaning of the Japanese word, which is, I guess like a skillful handling would be pretty close to it. But if we say skillful handling, then we don't really know the context yet, right? Like, if you play a Joseki nicely, it could be skillful handling, but it's not Sabaki. So we need some context to it. And so Zieli said that skillful handling of stones in the opponent's area. I think the opponent's area there is kind of a key detail that has to be added. Skillful handling of light stones in particular. Or at least we can say that a good Sabaki tends to be light, right? 3-3 invasion is Sabaki. I thought one explanation for the Japanese word Sabaki, which is not not the etymology is not quite connected to Go here, but one good example of a sabaki in Japanese is to how to make the best use of a fish. Like you have a raw fish which you want to prepare into food, but before you do that, you need to get rid of all the bones and innards and so on, right? So you have the base material, which is the fish. You have a tool, the knife, and with the tool, you take the base material and try to get the most out of it as possible. Like you want to lose as little meat as possible when you're taking out the innards and the stuff that you cannot eat. I guess for truly masterful sabaki, actually, you will take the innards and you will use them for soup, and also the fish bones. But yeah, so in Go terms, I think it's pretty good if we think of it in the sense that so the target matter is this opponent's framework or strong area. It doesn't have to be something that is becoming territory, but it could be like a moyo shape which has your group inside and which you have to defend. So there's that kind of a large key area which needs handling, and then you're supposed to handle it kind of neatly. Ah, yeah, in Aikido we have Sabaki as footwork. Make every part of fish work. Yeah, even sacrifice stones do a lot of good work. Invade the moyo and cut it out. Yeah, take a scalpel and just clean and cut it, right? Yeah, so how I wrote it down is just here. It's a fairly simple attempt. It probably doesn't cover all of the use cases, but this is what I came down with. So Sabaki is flexible handling of the opponent's frameworks and potential territories by the means of adjusting your own stone's lightness and heaviness. So I like to think of it in the way that, okay, so you have this opponent's framework, right? And you figure you have to do something about it. So this is not a control go situation where you can be just like, okay, I don't need to do anything. You keep it, I have enough. You need to take action. Or you think you need to take action with regard to the framework. And once we get to that point, then the doing sabaki is actually the point of figuring out what you should do. Like, is reducing good enough? Should you invade? Can you actually carry out the invasion? Like, if you have one more weak group nearby, and you're thinking of making a separate weak group inside the opponent's territory, which can possibly lead to the opponent getting a double attack, then that's usually not called sabaki. That's you're causing trouble for yourself. So there's this kind of whole board context which restricts what you can do reasonably. If you have weak groups, then you shouldn't be creating a new one. But if you also need to take care of the framework, then probably you should just kind of reduce it from the outside. So to me, Sabaki is the process that takes all of this into account. It's the judgment for figuring out how to handle the framework. Judgment work. And when we put it this way, this is one of the most difficult things in the whole game, right? Because you need to do the judging by yourself, you need to figure out the moves by yourself, and you usually cannot go by the book. It's something that's flexible and depends on the whole board situation. So this is also why I think that when you have Sabaki books and Sabaki lectures, well, actually you don't have so many of them, right? Because it's a difficult concept. You cannot nail it down quickly, and you have so many example cases that you can never kind of go through all of them, right? And probably most people cannot even put it in general terms because it's such a large concept. And that's something I'm trying to do here to the best of my ability, which is still not too much, but I figured somebody has to try it at least. Might be the hardest thing to grasp in this game. It's kind of like you have the... Like, if you do some martial arts, kendo or whatever, so you have lots of this hitting exercise, right? You have lots of muscle training. then you have these kata, the patterns that you repeat. And then finally speaking, when you actually go into fighting, it's just a kind of chaotic mess, right? And you just do what your body knows to make the most out of it, making some use of the kata but still doing it fluidly and naturally. So it's not something you can easily explain in that sense. So with this in mind, okay, now, so I need to go back to the board view, right? Here. So I took a judgment problem for us next. So if I'm claiming here that the Sabaki is the judging planning part, then let's try to have a look at that. This is a handicap game I played with Katago. So we just played a normal opening like this. And I just made an extension on the left side. So, well, Katago is white here, but let's try to think from its point of view. So we have this enormous black moyo, which is based in the lower left corner. And imagine you're playing white here. Your opponent is not me. Your opponent is somebody who is 3 stones weaker than you. You're playing white. What would you do about this kind of a black formation here? So this, what would you do, is exactly the question here. Like, the moment we start thinking in this way, in my opinion, you're doing Sabaki. Like, you have this target, which is the black framework, and you start thinking about what is the most that you can get out from here. Or the most you can get out of there, or in a sense, what is the most that you can reduce it? Like the least possible that you can give to black. Divide and conquer. So divide where is the question then. It's not just about the judgment, but you also need to have a kind of a more specific idea here. The bot doesn't 3-3. Well, the bot did 3-3, but it's not that simple. H3, E3 area, D3. Okay, so these are all in the F3 area. Yes, so lower left corner anyway. D2, yeah, that's the same kind of idea. K3 area. And G4. Okay, so most people anyway have the... I think the first general idea correctly. So I think this is kind of a key principle when it comes to invading, which is that when there's a kind of framework like this, so if we try to just somehow draw the outline, like if it becomes as big as possible, then maybe it looks like something like this, right? If black gets to expand it a little bit into the center. So this is kind of the target shape we're looking at. So if you can just have one group inside here, inside this target area, then generally you want to start from as much in the middle as possible. So when you go in the middle, which in this case is something like H3, I think. And if we go with something normal, like black kicking and pinzering and white going out, and something very natural getting played here. Okay, so this is not exactly a light treatment of this area, but if this happens, the white group gets out, and because it started from the center of the framework, in this way it's actually reducing, in a sense, the maximal potential, maximal amount of potential black territory here, because it's starting in the middle. So you can see that both of the territories on the left and right sides are not like extremely big when this happens. they're basically reduced to this kind of rough sizes. Whereas if you don't start from the heart or the center, and for example you try M3 instead, and something like this follows, and okay, finally black has to look after his stones. But so if this kind of a thing happens, then it's still the case that black has a kind of a box-like framework remaining here, right? Of course, it could be possible that white can invade this a second time, but this will immediately become a bit harder, because the A group is also something that white still has to look after, a little bit at least. So if you can just have one group inside, this is the logic behind going for the middle of the framework. And this is something I think most people here got right. So the A, B, C, D, well, E area is possibly a bit questionable, since this will make it still possible for black to cover from here. And, well, there's many options, but imagine black keeps building. So this might still give a kind of a box for black towards the left. So possibly E is just a little bit too much to the right, a little bit to the left, and it'll be just fine. So that's the general principle here. Okay, let me check the chat. Alright, but if I scroll then it breaks the... Wait. Okay, now it's back to this. So move ideas. Okay, so let's go for the corner invasion in that case, huh? So many people think that the 3-3 invasion could be a locally good result. So white invades, black blocks, so white extends, of course. There's a Joseki to this shape. We don't have too much time, so I will just show it. So black plays this diagonal over here. I mean, most people will probably think about the Hane over here, in which case this is the resulting shape. But black can improve this a little bit. So if black plays the diagonal, so white plays Hane connection anyway. Right now the group is not completely alive, because theoretically black can go for its eyes like this, right? This has the open question of white maybe being able to run out. And probably right now black cannot kill it, but if the situation outside changes just a little bit, then it might be immediately dead. So usually, to be sure, white wants to bump. Then he plays elsewhere. And if this happens, then the Hane connection here is black center. So like this, I guess. So just in terms of the left side, because black has these two stones here, black has a bit more territory, the shape is a little bit stronger. And the white corner is also a bit smaller. So that's just Joseki here. But so the question was, what does white do here? Does white just live normally? Do we just go for this sequence then? So if we go for this, white lives in the corner, but now black is extremely strong on the outside. So what do you do about that in that case? This could be a kind of a follow-up to the Sabaki question, actually. Could try d5? d5 when? Go Dave will have to elaborate a little bit. Hard to do more than reduction. I think that's correct. Like if you're the type of player, or if your opponent is a type of player who really hates giving the opponent territory, big looking territories, then it's easy to imagine them doing something like this invasion here, right? And when this kind of a thing happens, black will attack from the outside. And now white basically just has this lower side area in which to try to form eyes. So maybe diagonal attachment, Hane. I think black's going to play a double Hane. White counters. Normally black will connect in this shape, but extension might be possible as well. Well, let's just connect for a good shape. So it actually looks like white has very limited space here for two eyes. So this kind of a thing, black will peep. If white just forms the eye, black takes the other one out. This can at best get a ko for life, I think. So very non-ideal. And the problem is that because there's so little space here, it's not obvious what else white should do. So most likely this is just going too far in. After so Godave's idea was here. Go for the outside instead. Yeah, in one of my handicap games recently, Katago did a little bit like this. Like it made this kind of a cut, then it made use of a F3 center on the outside. So it's aiming for this connection, right? So basically forcing black to capture and getting this kind of a move in center and finally just living on the outside. Okay, so Yakago had the exact same idea. Yeah, so something like this could be conceivable, if not exactly a normal sequence or anything. Right. Yeah, so Yakago actually has seen it from the newsletter. But yeah, it comes up if you play with the AI. But right, so one of the main reasons I wanted to feature this game here was that I wanted to show what Katago did next. It was really impressive. So immediately after C6, it plays the upper attachment here. Okay, so well, black might respond with a Hane, but I just decided to keep the game simple. I extended, I said lower side is my territory. White jumps, okay, wedge is normal. Outer Atari, connect, and then white plays the Hane over here. And slight improvement to this corner Joseki. White doesn't connect, white goes down. So black anyway has to fix the cut, and now white is immediately able to play outside. So this arguably leaves just a little bit more Aji in the black shape at around A, but strictly speaking, it's not too different. Like, even if the shape was like this, it's still pretty much fair. It's a small improvement. Sneaky bots. But yeah, so the reason I wanted to show this was that this is a really nice judgment from white's point of view. And it's a nice judgment because Katago has figured out that it can give black something. Like, it doesn't need to take all of it away, which is kind of like the key realization of Sabaki playing in general. Because when you're playing Sabaki, when you're dealing with that opponent's framework, the fact of the matter is that the opponent has more stones in that area. He's supposed to get more there than you. Because usually if you have more stones, it means more profit, right? So it's a very important attitude that you're ready to give the opponent something and just take something away. Like, from one point of view, you want to reduce as much as possible. You want to remove reduce the opponent's potential as much as possible. But at the same time, another important question is, what is the most you can give to the opponent to make it still an even game? You want it all, you want it now. Yeah, so basically, the more you are willing to give to the opponent, usually it means the less you are facing the risk of getting captured with your stones, for example. The more you try to remove, the more you're putting yourself in risk with the weak groups, like, for example, where was this kind of a invasion sequence. If you want it all, then you also might die. And if you don't need all of it, then probably you can have an easier and safer time. That's a key principle I wanted to show here, or key way of thinking. Attitude, let's call it. 20 minutes left, okay. So I have 2 more examples left. I think the next one is a NGD game I actually reviewed just this morning. It's also about making the opponent pay as much as possible for the territory they do get, right? Yeah, that's also a way to make a way to think about it. So on the one hand, there is the target area you are handling, but it's also a very good idea to think about it from the opponent's point of view, because the opponent has also committed into that framework, right? They use the stones to form it. And if they want to win the game, they need to get something out of it, right? They need to transform the potential, the influence, into territory. Yeah. So in that sense, also, you can think about it that you try to make the opponent's stones as inefficient as possible in forming the territory. But you already made me pay my rent twice. So this game had this kind of... Yeah. So black just extended to q6. So we have a kind of emerging black framework on the right side. So... Okay, I'll be a bit of a programmer over here. Let's just run Sabaki on this situation. Run your Sabaki. What do you come up with? Run your Sabaki program. Oh, I'm hearing the Ishiakimo song from the outside. Maybe you can also hear it soon. SGF editor started. Right, there's the Sabaki editor. I didn't see that coming. Sabaki.exe has encountered an error and needs to close. Open it again. Try it again. So of course, in the end, you need to output a move, right? But before that, I mean, you also think about this black right side in general. So I guess the first thing we need to think about here is that is the right side threatening? Like, is it something we have to take action against? If we don't need to take action, then we can just do whatever, right? If we do need to take action, then it's the next step in the Sabaki. So then we have to figure out what we should do about it. How should we handle it? I guess also different from usual Sabaki problems. Right now in this situation, we still don't have a weak group or anything. We're just we're in the planning process of. We're kind of trying to imagine what the right side will look like later in this game, and we're trying to imagine that, and we're trying to compare it with this vision that do we want there to be white stones in the future, or do we not want white stones over there? And this is also something that's very difficult. Top right black is strong, so I wouldn't think that the right side is urgent to take care of, since that also makes q6 hard to attack. I would play s6 and 10, okay, but that's probably not the right way. Well, s6 is a possible idea, but maybe you're not in a hurry to play there in that case. Zafadius says you definitely don't want to invade. And there's that stone at f14. I don't see f14 though. It's so funny when a question is asked and it's followed by a silence full of crickets. I mean, that's why I keep the window open here, right? Question. Silence. Consider O first, then reduce. Yeah, the crickets are pretty good over here, I must say. Okay, so Yakago is exactly the same as me also. Like, it was already a bit earlier in this game, but I actually just wanted to play like a jump here, and extension has some liberty problems, so maybe Hane and... okay, it's a bit crude, but maybe like this, for example. Because this way White would actually get to use his upper left corner wall and start an attack on the K16 stones. But maybe that's not strictly the correct thing. It's an idea, but maybe not the only idea here. Something like P9. So Gardon's idea is pretty similar to White's in this game. You want to give Black his territory and reduce it as much as possible, then O5 and later S5. Okay, so now let's flip this thing over. So let's say White plays a big move that doesn't affect the board too much. Maybe this capture over here is not too small. It's maybe not the biggest, but I don't think it's making big loss over here. So let's try to think about this from Black's point of view now. So Black has that nice emerging framework on the right side. What would you do about it as Black if you were to do something about it? So my question is that you're forbidden from playing moves like this one that just connect the K16 stone. Like, you want to make the right side big. With this premise, what would you do? O5 for Black? N6? N5 or N6? Yeah, something like that area. Like, I think N6 would be my idea here, right? So, from Black's point of view, Black wants to make it into this huge box that's going in the center. Box-like shapes are ideal for forming big territories, so something like this is Black's vision. And so when Black does play the move, then the key question for us is this scary from White's point of view? Can White still manage this? So kind of the twist I'm trying to make here is that if White could play elsewhere and let Black further build the framework, and if White still has a good way to deal with it, then it's not something that White really had to worry about in the first place. Making a big basket to put all your eggs in. So in this kind of a situation, we can think about I like the term parachute trooper. So we just kind of come from the center side, something like this. So can you throw this parachute trooper from N9 so that it's difficult enough for Black to try to capture it? So the idea is that if Black tries something like cap over here, then we can just play something extremely simple and just go out with a diagonal. Black doesn't have to, strictly speaking, capture it. But if Black cannot, then it means that the framework is not going to transform into too big of a territory, right? From the reducer's point of view. So probably with something like this, White can get out, right? So even in case Black does get to play the jump, that's right, and White plays here, Black cannot get an extremely big territory, right? Looks destined from heaviness on the one hand, fun ride for White on the other hand. They're both possibly true. I mean, this is definitely a heavy White group. It's something White cannot sacrifice anymore. But on the other hand, as we saw in the game with Lucas and Oscar, it's not necessarily a bad thing that you have a heavy group, because if it lives and the opponent isn't left with much, then it's possible that the territory balance is good for you anyway, right? Right, so if we assume that White can prevent a big big black framework in this way, does that then mean that black should do something like this to build? Like, what do you think about this kind of a P9 move? Is the right side territory big? It's not very big, right? I mean, it's 5th line territory, but that 5th line territory is also using the strongest group on the board, which is this black group. And still later on, white's going to play this move in Sente. White's probably going to descend and play Hane Connection in Sente. So we're looking at 20 points probably. Yeah. So the right side isn't just something that you can make into territory as black efficiently. And if that's the case, it also means that it's not something white needs to reduce right now. So that's I would call the first step of the Sabaki thinking here. Like, you don't need to take action if you don't want to. So I think many players here had the good idea of just doing something in the vicinity. Like, for example, preventing this black jump, making it hard for black to play it. So white could just jump here. White could maybe just play some kind of Keima. So that, finally speaking, it's hard for black to get the big box shape and to turn it into territory. Or if white doesn't really worry about, then white could just do something totally different, as we also saw. So in the game here, white did invade. So this is usually something that black should be cheering about, because now there's a target that black can attack, right? And, well, the game goes a little bit differently here, but if black, for example, played this kind of shoulder hit here, probably Hane. Well, cutting might be too much, but let's play double Hane, huh? So white cannot very easily cut through here. His own stones are in trouble as well. So probably he has to extend. Black can even peep the eye shape here and then connect. So how does this look then? I mean, it's definitely a heavy group again, but probably white is not dying, or is he? Now that's the key question here. Yeah, so most people don't like it. So previously we had the heavy white group. Let's see if I can still find the sequence, which was here. This was arguably a heavy group, but this is also totally getting out into the center, right? This kind of a shape. White is just going through the black shape, and there's plenty of different directions you can run into. So this kind of a group is usually easy to settle. And here, here you basically just have one direction. And black even has stones there, so you probably don't have free hands. You turn here, black plays Hane. You want to play Hane, but you're not even sure if you can, because black might plausibly cut here, I think. Okay, so you're forced to jump here, black can extend, and you still kind of have a cutting point. Yeah, so one direction is... that's a good idea. We all know one direction is awful. Yeah, it's definitely better if you have several directions you can go into. I'm not sure I get the joke over here. It seems like there's some other substance here as well. But yeah, so Garden's point here is also good. So if white were to play on the right side, he should at least play a little bit higher, so that the attack is more difficult to carry out. Yeah, it seems like I didn't get it. Kind of a band? Okay, I'm not too familiar with popular culture here, so... Yeah, so Garden's idea was to go one line higher. That's that kind of a band. Okay. One direction. Okay, so one direction is awful, huh? I'll just take that for granted. Yeah, shoulder hit is not so dangerous here. Actually, when I was thinking about it in those terms, I was actually thinking white could even go one line further here. Because when we think about from black's point of view here, black never wants to play on third line. This is like playing inside your own territory already. fourth line is a bit more like it, but this is still like it doesn't feel like you're making territory bigger, you're just trying to keep it. Because the stones were already on the fourth line. So if you really wanted to try to make this right side into territory, I think you would want to make this kind of a bulging shape on the fifth line. So this is the territorial move that black might want to think about. So with that in mind, then from white's point of view, I want to play one line higher up from that. So now most likely the black fifth line move is bad, right? I mean, it seems like it gives white nice honey moves on, well, one of the sides. But if black cannot play it, and black wants to defend his territory, then he has to keep to the lower shape, right? And if this happens, then arguably from white's point of view, we can say that the exchange of these stones isn't bad, because this prevents the black framework from building in size, and kind of limits its maximum size, right? And at the same time, we can even say that the white A stone here is kind of light, because, well, first of all, it already did its job in making black commit to the territory, and now it's on the outside, so it can be a ladder breaker. Maybe later on, white can build something in the center like this, or like this, or play forcing moves. So it's definitely something that's nice for white to have here. So I think this could also be a valid kind of playing here, a valid way of doing Sabaki on this right side, if white feels like he has to do something about it. Okay, I don't get the song either. Sugar, no, honey. Wait, so I had one more example, but we're almost out of time here. I think I will cut the last example because I just had the kind of a conclusion slide here that I think we should look at. Yeah, it can also help in the fight when you cut with N16. So it's kind of background support there, right? It's a nice light stone in the center. Those never hurt. Actually, when I think about it, the game with Sai and Toye Koyo from Hikaru no Go, can I quickly recreate that? I mean, I'm not totally sure about this shape. I think it was like this here. But how did black do this already? Has white played once elsewhere? Let's say white has played once elsewhere and we have this shape. Sai versus Toeko. No, it's kind of just like because it's an uncommon shape. And it's also a kind of a nice Sabaki-like thinking. Because I seem to... Oh, right. So white probably played I'm not sure, but I think it was this kind of a shape, huh? And I'm pretty sure that black played a sixth line move here. I mean, I seem to recall that it was this kind of a position on the right side. Might be just a little bit off, but I think this is the general structure. So this is also a... Clearly not memorized. Okay, so somebody gave the link already, so maybe you can check if this is correct or not. But also a similar kind of thinking here, right? So black is afraid that if he goes too far in... the YouTube shows... Well, maybe I can just quickly check it. So it was with the Keima shape. Okay. It was with the Keima shape. So like this, huh? And black has played Keima as well. Yeah. And then black plays here and here and here, and this happens. Yeah, so the point still stands that black didn't want to go too far in, because then when white plays the outer cap, now this is something that black feels pressure about. Like, it's becoming a heavy group that black has to commit to. And instead, if he can play on the outside like this, so now this white right side structure is something that cannot grow in size anymore. It's this fixed territory, And black also has these center stones that are not easy for white to attack, and that can very possibly be a bonus for black in the future. Ladder breakers, possible combination to a black framework. Notably, white also defended. I'm pretty sure it's just even. Since, well, I don't think black has anything to complain about here. But white is also getting 4th line territory without having to use up a move turn for it, right? So at least I wouldn't call it unreasonable for white anyway. Like it feels like white is also getting a kind of his share. yeah, that's crickets. Window is open. Right, but mainly I just wanted to show this one here so that you just kind of get the idea that you don't have to take it all out, right? A good Sabaki can also be something that you give something to the opponent and just get a reasonable amount for yourself. So let me just get that last slide here then. Okay, this might look a little bit messy, but try to think of it as a kind of graph for the upper 2 lines. So we have this light, heavy dimension, right? So a light position is something that you're not compelled to take action. So then you can play the control go, as I explained in the first lecture, which I held in July. So then you can just play the 2 space jumps, 1 space extensions, and just take territory. And then you can have the very heavy kind of situation where the opponent has that perfect framework which you just have to handle, and you don't even have a good way to do it. Like you're just doing your best not to die in an easy way. So that's when you use the cockroach style, where you go over the top and try to make the opponent feel bad about their killing attempts. And the Sabaki thinking that we'll be looking at here today is something that's in the middle, right? So you need to have a kind of idea of the whole board situation, like can you have a heavy group on the board? Are you busy elsewhere? If you already have heavy groups and you cannot commit to a new one, then maybe you should just kind of lightly raise from the outside. Or if you're totally solid everywhere, then probably you can go for a deep invasion, just one of them. And furthermore, if we think about what's going on inside your head, so with Control Go and Sabaki, it's you need to use some positional judgment, right? Control Go was all about positional judgment, like where do you want to have your groups? Okay, now they're all strong, now make territory, everything is easy. And in Cockroach style, it was about not dying easily, so it was about flexible handling of stones and shapes. And Sabaki is something that has to use both of them. So with Sabaki, you need to do the positional judgment thing. You need to think about the whole board and what works for it. And on the other hand, when you do start to handle your groups, you still need to do it with some efficiency, right? And then finally, for these 2 different actions, I just took one key question for each. For positional judgment, like most people actually think about what is the most you can get out, right? But I think it's a safer way to think about what can you afford to give to the opponent. Because if you're willing to give the opponent something, it will mean that you're also taking less risk of dying with your invasion, for example. So what you can afford to give to the opponent is a kind of healthy question you want to ask yourself from time to time. And with the flexible handling of stones, you always need to adjust how many groups you can deal with. So usually if you already have one weak group on the board, you shouldn't be creating a new weak group. At least not a heavy one. Possibly it could work out if the heavy group is on the one end of the board, and then the framework you're trying to invade is on the opposite corner. But the closer they are, the more likely it's the opponent is going to get some severe double attack. So that's the thing that you need to adjust there. Usually you can just concentrate on one group, unless the position is really severe, special. How much can I afford to give? Thanos 2021? What is Thanos? There's too many. I think it's also a pop culture reference, which I'm not following here. Yeah, but so this went a little bit over time, and there was one example we didn't have time to see, but I think this made for a nice package and nice conclusion for the trilogy of the lectures here. So if you have any questions at this point, now would be a good timing. We will finish after this one. And wasn't it Thanatos, the Greek god of death? Anyway, so while you're thinking of the questions, I'll just link the Nordic Go Dojo. So the online league is running now in October, but we are going to have a break in November and December. So for the time being, you cannot join the online league anymore, but we are still going to continue doing lectures, and we are still having the Tsumego. And when I have time for it, I will most likely do some other Go posts as well. So that's something you can still check on the website. Marvel villain. Okay. Fourth lecture will be in 2 parts, so that sounds like it's going to be some movie, huh? Movie like a Harry Potter movie 7 part 1 part 2 or something like that. Yeah, so that's the website link, and the next lecture we have is going to be in 1 week. So it's going to be on the 9th of October. I think it's going to be Jeff or Oscar who is holding it. Najaya is asking, did AI affect the understanding of Sabaki in any way? Yakago thinks AI has made more people realize that they can leave Moyos by themselves for longer. Yeah, I think that's true. And like in general, Go right now is becoming more flexible for sure. Like groups that you wouldn't even think about sacrificing or just leaving be can possibly be left. Oscar said last week he had no time, but he also said in the chat that he would like to try to do one if possible. And I think it was about next week in particular, but we will see at that point. Yes, I'm not sure if it's Sabaki in particular, but at least playing Go has become more flexible in general with the AI. It's only natural because now we have more ideas about what is possible, right? Interesting sacrifices and early Tenukian exchanges, all of that is happening now. Whereas if you look at old games, especially from like 1950s or before that, I've been looking at Go Seigen games recently, it somehow feels heavier. I guess heavier is the word. Because they have these very strict ideas about, okay, I'm going to have this group here, you're going to have that group here, this is going to be my territory here, that's your territory there. Now I'm going to invade this area. It's straightforward and not whole board flexible in the same sense. Of course, that makes it easier to understand, so I think it's still good study material. But it's quite different from modern Go, I think. What is Marvel? Okay, I'm not going to answer that. Any more Sabaki Control Go cockroach style questions? Seems like not so far. Well, there's always going to be a next lecture as well. It might be a different topic, but we'll see at that point. And if you're an NGD student, then we can of course continue this discussion in the Discord. So I guess we can then finish here. Thanks for watching, and see you hopefully again in 1 week.